Hello everyone. On behalf of the Victorian team at the Institute of Architects, I'd like to offer you a warm welcome to today's lean-in the Sustainable Architecture Awards Masterclass, which will showcase 3 of the projects recognised in the 2025 RAIA Victoria Sustainable Architecture category. My name is Stephanie Bullock and I'm from Coslock Architecture and I'm the President of the Victorian chapter of the Australian Institute of Architects, and it's my honour to be your host and moderator for today's lean-in session. We're joining from across the country today and we acknowledge with deep respect the traditional owners of this land. We acknowledge that it is a privilege to stand on country and walk in the footsteps of those before us, and we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. This lean-in session is being recorded, so if you miss anything today or have to leave early, we'll be publishing this recording on the Institute's YouTube channel in the next couple of days. We will share that link with you in our upcoming email communications. This lean-in session also enables you to ask questions of our panellists, so if you have a question or a comment, please use the Q&A box down the bottom of the screen to add yours in, and we'll go through these later in the session. Before we hear from our three presenters though, I'd like to introduce Deb Adams, who is a Senior Associate and Sustainability Lead at BKK Architects and was the jury chair for this category for this year's awards. Deb is going to provide a brief overview of the key elements the jury considered when reviewing the entrants in this category and in determining the award outcomes. Thank you, Deb.
Thanks, Steph. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land of which I'm currently on, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung, the longest-serving custodians of this country and the original pioneers of sustainable and regenerative design in Australia. We're fortunate enough today to be joined by this year's Sustainability Award winners, Susanna Waldron from Searle and Waldron Architects, John McElderry from McElderry Partners and Jeff Crosby from Crosby Architects. The entries in this year's Sustainability Awards category came from a wide range of fields and scales, but the winning entries you'll see here today demonstrate measures and initiatives that went above and beyond business as usual. The commendation was awarded to Searle and Waldron's Northern Memorial Park Depot for its intelligent integration of sustainability within an unconventional and challenging building typology, creating a warm, welcome and durable environment for the park staff. The Architecture Award winner, Woodley Regenerative Future Studio, is an exemplar of sustainable education design. Each material has been meticulously selected for its sustainable credentials, and waste has been minimised through both the building's design as well as during construction. The project both supports and is integral to the pedagogical approach to the school and delivers not only a sustainable home for students, but also local plant life and insects. The paddock by Crosby Architects took out the named award, impressing the judges with its ambitious living building challenge targets, extensive materials research and thorough stakeholder engagement to not only create buildings which were highly sustainable, but also created a sustainable community. The paddock shows what is possible, that it's possible to achieve sustainable large-scale housing outcomes beyond Greater Melbourne, and there is an appetite for projects such as these in regional areas. The commonality across all projects, however, were passionate clients who supported each firm's ambitions to create not only great architecture, but also outcomes that were highly sustainable. I'll now hand back over to Steph to introduce each of the speakers.
Thank you so much, Deb, for that great overview. So our next presenter is Susanna Waldron, who is the Director of Searle and Waldron Architecture, a Melbourne-based practice specialising in inventive public and community projects that uniquely respond to place. Since co-founding the studio in 2007, she has explored how projects across scales can prompt meaningful urban and social transformation. The studio's approach is innovative, strategic and grounded in civic purpose, producing work that is both conceptually rigorous and publicly generous. Susanna will be presenting the Northern Memorial Park Depot, which was very recently awarded the Victorian Architecture Medal and the Melbourne Prize, and also a commendation in the Sustainable Architecture category at the 2025 Victorian Architecture Awards, as well as last week, the Harry Seiler Award for Commercial Architecture at the National Awards in Canberra last week, and last night, a high commendation in the Victorian Premier's Design Awards, recognising an incredible dedication to thoughtful, site-responsive design that enriches both community and context. Thanks, Susanna. Happy for you to now share your screen.
Thanks, Steph. I'll just get my share sorted here. I hope everybody can see that one. And thanks for the kind words and introductions on this project. Okay. I'm going to present the slides that we showed in the sustainability category at the Vic presentations for the Institute Awards this year, and I'll just do a few interjections as I go as well, just to kind of explain some of our thinking around how we thought we would structure the presentation. Entering the sustainability category was actually quite interesting for our practice. Although we'd met the benchmark before, we hadn't gone through and entered a project specifically in this category. And it was kind of a really nice opportunity actually to reflect on what we had achieved and try to quantify that in some way as well. So Northern Memorial Park Depot is a significant project for Metropolitan Cemeteries Trust. It was built by Building Engineering. It's a contemporary facility which challenges the conventional typology of an operations depot by providing a beautiful workplace for people who work in emotionally challenging roles, dealing daily with grief and loss. Sustainability was a design priority for the project from the outset, and design infrastructure for longevity and sustainability. And we, as part of kind of finalising a project out to a client, and we were about to contractor to get some input. And this was a really lovely quote that James Reed, the CEO from GMCT, provided, and we incorporated that into the presentation. Depot is in Gowrie train station, opposite of Fisher Cemetery, and a in wet just that contains context is quite dropped down. Oh, see. Great. I think I was talking, so these for the presentation, we use them both in sustainability and also in our principles of the project. Of workshops, storage and garage spaces. And due to the site constraints, spatial planning and a sustainability. This includes material selection and reuse, passive thermal energy efficiency, specifically to sustainability category to the more days of workshops.
I just want to check, Susanna, we're getting some connectivity issues, I think. I'm not sure if we've lost you. What we might do, I think, because maybe I might have just lost Susanna's connection. If it's all right, what I might suggest is we might move on to John and then circle back to Susanna, because I know we'd all really love to see the presentation. So I might just do a quick introduction for John, and then we might come back come back and do them in a slightly different order, if that's okay. So I'd now like to introduce John Mickeldowie from Mickeldowie Partners. John is the director at Mickeldowie Partners, an architectural practice specialising in education and master planning projects across Australia and New Zealand. A third generation architect, John is committed to creating spaces that reflect the vision of the people who use them. Guided by the belief that architecture is an expression of values, his approach centres on co-design to bring those values to life. John is presenting Woodley Regenerative Future Studio, which is getting an award in this category this year, and last night won the Victorian Premier's Design Award in the architecture category. Thanks, John. If you're happy now to share your screen and start, that would be great.
Thank you, Steph. And one sec, and everybody, excuse me. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see that and hear me. Look, thank you for the introduction, Steph. I'm delighted to be presenting the Woodley Regenerative Future Studio, an amazing project designed in collaboration with Joost Bakker, and really led by the school, Woodley, whose vision around sustainability was phenomenal and really set the ground bed for us to push the boundaries and innovate in this project pretty much every way possible. So I'll walk through it. I'd like to acknowledge traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to elders past and present. The Woodley Year 10 Future Studio is a productive living building that provides a dynamic project-based learning environment for students, rooftop habitat for endangered native pollutants, sequesters carbon dioxide, filters pollutants, and provides its own energy to create an environment abundant with regenerative real-world learning opportunities for students. So the site's located at the northern edge of the senior school campus, adjoining some farmland to the north still further, and a wildlife reserve to the east, and both of which are critical to the school's project-based learning program. The existing campus, the site sort of sits just beyond the existing campus, a little creek running through here on the left, and the wildlife reserve on the right. The brief of the project was to develop a new homestead model and to expand on the work of Evan Walker and Darryl Jackson originally, who designed the sort of campus as a series of homesteads that supported student belonging. And again, by law, a little bit more recently, as a new home for Year 10 students to ease pressure on the existing campus, but importantly to extend the transformative experience that students have, a sort of outdoor education experience called Clutter, and bring the hands-on learning experiences from that to the campus. Alongside this, the homestead would support a new learning program focused on regenerative sustainability, real-world learning, and holistic education, linked closely with the surrounding farm and nature reserve. So in response to the learning program, as well as significant global emissions and waste from construction, we provoked why build a building when you can build an ecosystem. The design then aims to interlink ecological, social and built systems to contribute to the regenerative aspirations of the learning program. To do this, we've designed the building as a system that is a living, breathing example for students, demonstrating what a regenerative future might look like. I think this quote from the principal, David Baker, kind of sums up the ambition for the project. It's that the building itself will be a system that the kids are engaged with all of the time as part of their learning. So I want to start just by talking a little bit about the construction system, because that's kind of the heart of how this building is trying to innovate. It is, in the first instance, a prefabricated steel post and truss frame. Steel, interestingly, was chosen for its efficiency, but also because forest-grown timber can create monocultures and has potentially poor ecological outcomes. The concrete slab that sits below it is on a sort of plastic cupolex waffle dome system, and importantly, that allows the separation at the end of its life, which isn't possible with styrofoam insulation that you traditionally have under a slab. The walls, ceiling, and the roof are all made from compressed straw panels, and they're embedded with biochar to clean the air the students breathe. And these panels sequester approximately 100,000 kilos of carbon dioxide. And they're also completely compostable, so any waste generated from on site is just returned back to the farm. The facade is made of recycled cork sprayed over an FC sheet substrate, which reuses waste from the wine industry. And solar panels act as shading devices, as well as a pergola for outdoor learning, and provide 136% of the energy demand for the building, making it net zero in operation. It's also completely net zero in design, construction, and at end of life. I'll come back to that as part of our lesson learned. The battery storage system tied to the solar panels is Australian made and completely recyclable, with energy monitoring in each classroom, so the students can kind of gamify their use of the building and create opportunities for live behaviour adjustments to enhance the efficiency. The timber pergola that sits on the north side of the building to connect indoor and outdoor spaces is recycled from St Kilda Pier, and all other timber on the project is locally sourced from agroforestry. The living green roof creates a protected habitat zone that can't be accessed by invasive species like rabbits who have damaged the nearby nature reserve. It's designed in collaboration with landscape architect Sam Cox. It includes specific Indigenous flowering shrubs and grasses that act as a habitat for endangered native butterflies, bees and birds that cannot be grown on the ground. This means the building is a practical extension of the wildlife reserve and provides something that wildlife reserve cannot. And it also, come back to this, but it provides really amazing learning opportunities for students to engage with the butterflies that are spawning on the roof, so that students are able to tap into and map the ecological benefits of the building. The roof holds 50 ml of water at all times and uses a drought-resilient wicking bed system to ensure the plants are well maintained, and they're still in good nick now after a summer or two. The green roof itself weighs down the building significantly and massively reduces the need for concrete footings. And it makes the green roof effectively cost neutral, which was a key driver in the decision making on the journey with the client. And based on some initial testing that Yoast ran with the CSIRO, there's a view that the roof may be providing an insulative value of up to R17. So the reliance on air conditioning inside, and again being tested in practice, is extremely limited. All building materials are completely are 100% compostable or recyclable, meaning there doesn't need to be any landfill at the end of the building's life. And the system is unitised as prefabricated components, which when combined with a local procurement strategy, have produced a near net zero construction system, with 96% of the waste generated recycled. To put it into a different perspective, the contractor would typically allow 100 skip bins for a project of this scale. We had 6, with 96% recycled from that 6. So there's a significant shift here in the waste generated from the construction, and that's largely down to the prefabricated steel, as well as the DuraPanel or compressed straw panels. This is a plan here. You can see sort of the building is a collection of modular pavilions linked by courtyards and sheltered outdoor living spaces. The courtyard plan allows all the rooms to have a northern orientation, with solar panel eaves shading the north and west glazing, and all rooms also able to have cross ventilation. Aquaponics tanks hold native fish, yabbies and freshwater mussels in the courtyards, filling those spaces with the sound of running water, providing learning opportunities on ecology and biology for students, as well as a food source, like literally catching a fish for lunch at school. Each pavilion houses a separate function and aspect of the brief. And the largest houses a collection of 5 learning spaces that you're seeing here. They're arranged linearly, with 2 quiet meeting pods adjoining them, and a series of flexible learning settings for personalisation and student agency. The learning spaces are fitted with recycled fabric ceiling panels, as well as large sliding doors that link the spaces that allow traditional project-based or subject-based learning to occur side by side with the school's project-based learning program, which is a really critical flexibility piece that they needed. In addition to that, a series of hemp sliding whiteboards, which you can see opening and closing here, slide the length of that linear space and allow the building to be reorganised as a linear gallery for exhibition of student work at the end of the year, as well as ongoing learning. A second pavilion houses staff areas and amenities, while a third, seen here, acts as the homestead, a communal kitchen and social space shared between staff and students, building a sense of belonging and community. All the joinery in here, and just in the project more broadly, as well as all the student tables, are made from Australian grown hemp. which is a crop that grows in 90 days and sequesters more carbon than any other plant humans grow. It's the first commercial use of this product in Australia, and an amazing alternative to MDF. Critically, there are no VOCs or formaldehydes in any of the materials, and that sort of material research throughout the project was a really critical part of the development of this project, but it produces an indoor environment that will drastically improve learning outcomes and wellbeing outcomes. So the building costs about $6,200 a square metre, and for a building that's completely net zero, that's innovating on every level with all its material choices, we believe that represents great value for money. Additionally, the project has been open sourced under a Creative Commons license, which allows other schools and other people, we've had a series of people contact us, to get access to the drawings and specification, etc., to use the technology innovations that we've tested here to provide public benefit from a private project. Again, demonstrating to students and the wider community what regeneration, what sustainability might actually look like, and inspiring them, hopefully, to take action. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sean. So I'm now going to pass back to Susanna to run through her project. Thanks, Susanna. And if you could stop sharing your screen, John, that'd be great.
I thought I already had.
Okay. How are you going, Susanna? Is that sharing? I can also circle back up to Jeff. I think you're on mute. That's come up. Perfect.
Hi, apologies everyone. Are we sharing?
Yep, all good.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. No. I'm so sorry, Steph. I just have to wait 1 minute.
I'm going to suggest that we go to Jeff to give you a bit more time, Susanna. I know it seems a bit of a nightmare, to be honest, so I reckon that's easier. Can I get you to stop sharing? And I might now pass over to Jeff.
I think I'm good. So sorry. Okay.
No, honestly, it happens all the time. Okay, I'll leave it with you, Susanna. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. In the sustainability presentation, things went a bit smoother than this. Hopefully there's some laughs in the silence of the Zoom webinar here. Anyway, I'll pick up where I was. I'm Susanna Waldron, presenting Northern Memorial Park Depot, a project that we did for GMCT, the Greater Metropolitan Cemeteries Trust. A really important part of this project was reflecting the values of the client. And I was talking a little bit about some of the site analysis that we presented in the project. I think I had got to this sort of point of talking about the site constraints. We had a very long western facade, which was unavoidable just due to the site layout. And we took strategic kind of decisions during the layout of the spaces to orient spaces that needed light towards the north and spaces towards the west that could be shielded from the sun along that long edge. This sustainability drawing was really a key thing that we worked on as part of the presentation for this award entrance, pulling together kind of all of the different strategies we had in the building. This project was not a Green Star certified process. We went down that pathway originally, but we really took an approach with the client of trying to maximise doing as much in terms of sustainability as we could. And so this presentation strikes to speak to some of those things. Northern Memorial Park provides a mix of workshops, offices, storage and garage spaces for GMCT's staff operations. It's a 2-storey mass timber operations hub, and it rethinks a traditional depot typology. The industrial truss was a really big part of our rethinking of that. So in terms of the way we conceived the project, we chose timber for its sustainability. It's a renewable resource with low embodied carbon. And also a really important thing was its natural warmth and connection to nature. So the ability to have a biophilic effect and enhance overall staff wellbeing. The project makes significant use of spruce, glulam, CLT, and this forms the primary timber structural trusses and flooring throughout the project. And as part of our kind of submission in this Institute Awards, we actually kind of followed up on confirming what the embodied carbon was, going back to Tekka, who are our timber supplier, and kind of including some of those facts and figures in the presentation as well. Part of our process was working through sort of highly detailed trusses. These were digitally fabricated by Ergodomus and Tekka for efficient on-site fabrication and minimal wastage, and we developed this sort of level LOD 400 model to assist with that. The process of resolving the timber structure in collaboration with building engineering and Tekka has resulted in sustainable structure. It also has beautiful details. And so, you know, those two things were things we spoke about in the presentation. I think in terms of construction and operational waste, we look to minimise this through incorporating digital fabrication processes, which obviously minimise that, on-site cutting of sheet materials and linings. 95% of construction waste was recycled, and timber offcuts were almost entirely eliminated through the digital fabrication process, and some of the offcuts used for joinery as well. Proximity to transport connections, including the upfield train line, moorland and upfield shared user bike path, also made this an ideal site for the new cemetery staff operations building. And although some of that work was done by our client prior to us being engaged on the project, we tried to make sure that the way that we designed the project allowed for those easy connections for staff in terms of public transport and bike access. The facade is modulated. Entry points were designed to prioritise so those public transport connections, also providing adjacent seating where we had bike parking, encouraging cycling commutes with end of trip internal facilities as well. The facade modulates across its different orientations. So this is the east facade. We did a series of slides just on each facade here where we talked about the qualities of each. So quite simple structure, but on the east we have a public entry space opposite the train station. The screen is lifted at the base and creates a shaded colonnade. On the north facade, we take advantage of this orientation with punctured openings, collecting sun. They're intersected by timber trusses and offer light-filled framed views that connect this north facade to the social kitchen and horticulture spaces, and also to the views to the native wetlands beyond. The southern facade provides a vehicle entry point for the garage and shaded outdoor working zones for staff. And the west facade incorporates these angled perforated mesh facades and operable shaded awnings to provide solar protection along this long face. So this is sort of the details of those louvered fins and indented entrances along the west, which provide kind of shaded and also animated kind of entry points, sort of animated by the afternoon sun. Natural airflow and cross ventilation were prioritised. So just, you know, small, going through each of the key things. We tried to create high internal open air spaces that would sit between these enclosed pods, which housed office and meeting rooms. So really minimising the areas which required mechanical ventilation. Open and perforated mesh screens and web mesh netting were provided to openings in naturally ventilated areas, allowing for passive cooling and reducing material usage. And a mix of enclosed, conditioned and open air spaces were provided for work and collaboration. So it's an image of some of our team sitting in one of those spaces. The intent here was just to minimise conditioned areas and create flexibility for the operations team. And I think, you know, part of this was thinking about the workforce who we were designing the building for too. They're very much indoor, outdoor workers. And so this kind of connection to the elements was a key part of our briefing with them. We sort of looked at some of the internal spaces here as well. So we used ceiling fans in workshops. We had targeted HVAC design. This allowed for the co-location of offices and interior spaces and industrial and vehicle areas. Natural light was critical. We amplified this with interior skylights, which are oriented to the north and the east and bring light into this large internal span of the depot spaces. So, you know, there was a real risk that some of these spaces might feel quite industrial and dark, and the integration of natural light alleviated a lot of that. Open walkways and voids, just focusing on how we created both spatial but also social connections within the depot. And I think this sort of idea of sustainability also extending to the well-being of occupants was a kind of a key part of what we wanted to talk about with this building. In addition, sort of sustainable and carbon neutral floorings and finishes and wall linings were sourced from sustainably harvested products. And there was something in the acoustics of a lot of these spaces, which also was improved through the use of timber working well in the sort of confines of a large and sometimes loud depot environment. Planting was quite critical. So Australian native plants were incorporated into internal planters. These are maintained by the horticulture team who work on site. And there was, you know, both a visual amenity to including planters, but also improving air quality and the associated benefits on concentration and staff engagement that come through that. A key part of the social connections in the buildings was a social staircase, which connects levels. This amphitheatre stair also kind of encourages staff to use the stairway rather than the lifts as their primary circulation route, and connects sort of social spaces, amenity, collaboration spaces, and lunchrooms. One really interesting part of the project was the use of a very, very local brick recycler. So the image in the middle here, you can see the brick recycler, which is actually located 2 doors down. And so we sourced over 105,000 recycled bricks from just 50 metres away from the site. And that was, they were used for both the sort of perimeter walls and paving and external ground floor walls and some of the kind of seating and joinery elements on the exterior as well. And that was also, it was a very opportunistic thing that developed at the beginning of the design of the project through a site walk. Rainwater collection is also critical and forms part of a site-wide water reclamation and filtration strategy, and included a 40 kilolitre on-site tank, rain gardens, and the reuse of collected water for irrigation. Again, solar PV, I'm just sort of pointing out each of these things, but there's a 99 kilowatt Hauer solar PV system on the roof, which has also been designed for future expansion if necessary, and is anticipated to offset the annual energy consumption of the building. So there's a target to achieve net zero in terms of operational energy consumption. We worked with Oculus and Claire Martin in particular to really think about landscape on this project. So designing around the existing trees, there were these very beautiful mature gums was a key part of it. And we sought from really early on to identify ways to mitigate any threats that would reduce the extent of Indigenous trees and habitat. The sort of civic facing facade to the east wraps behind those existing trees, sort of framing this mature canopy. This does a couple of things, but it creates spaces for staff to sit and connect with landscape. And then new planting has been introduced. It's actually really established now, but in these photos was obviously recently planted. And this was a part of an emerging woody meadows landscape. So this landscape strategy was developed in collaboration with Oculus, the University of Melbourne, and the client's horticulture team. And so Claire and her team at Oculus did a lot of research with Dr. Claire Farrell from the University of Melbourne. It's a woody meadow trial plot, and this is a sort of an innovative low maintenance resilient planting approach. And one of the things that, you know, we saw a post that the landscape team had done when they were planting on site saying there was over 18,000 plants. So we also took the opportunity with entering the Sustainability Awards to just kind of come up with some of these facts and figures about the extent of trying to measure, if you like, quantify the sustainability of the project. We also talked about one of the future things which has not been realised in this stage of works, but hopefully will be in future, which is future creek naturalisation. The project's located right next to a Melbourne water retarding basin and Campbellfield Creek, which is a concrete culvert adjacent to the site. This had impacts in terms of us needing to address 1 in 100-year flood levels and deal with building levels, but also a very beautiful strategy was developed by Oculus in terms of the potential to naturalise that creek, which would add to ground permeability, slow water flow and improve flood mitigation. And there was an approach we took as a design team into how we could deconstruct and partially reuse the demolished culvert. And so we're hoping this will form part of a future memorial spaces adjacent to the site. So this is sort of wrapping up our kind of presentation. I think what we were really interested in was making the often overlooked aspects of cemetery operations visible, engaging and beautiful. We hope that this project sets a new standard for operational facilities and memorial infrastructure. And we know it's playing a crucial role in shaping the future of our clients' services and reflecting their shared values for longevity and sustainability. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Susanna. That was absolutely perfect. So now I'd like to introduce our final presenter, who is Jeff Crosby, Director of Crosby Architects. Jeff has 30 years of experience in housing sustainability, first in Melbourne and in the last 15 years in the regional Victorian town of Castlemaine. His latest project, The Paddock, is a 27-unit cluster housing development, which was awarded the Alan and Beth Caldecott Named Award for Sustainable Architecture, as well as a commendation in the Residential Architecture Multiple Housing category. Thank you, Jeff. Happy for you to now share your screen.
Thank you. I'll just get to share. Right. As explained, the Paddock's a 27-unit development. It's started for our practice, which is a very small practice in Castlemaine. There's only 3 of us generally. Back in 2008, before I actually moved to Castlemaine, so it's had a long gestation period. Castlemaine obviously was the centre of the goldfields in the 1850s, so it was pretty decimated. So this is important in terms of what we were trying to do with introducing ecological diversity into the site along with housing. It's just on the edge of the main part of Castlemaine, which is the intersection of 3 creeks, and you can see the paddock there. It's the edge of the town zone and looking out into the rural zone. This was the project in 2008. The clients came to us and said they wanted to do a development of a site they'd owned for 20 odd years that had a dam on it, and they thought they might do some housing. And we said there was probably a lot more density that could be introduced in to stop the spread of the town beyond the main town zone. This is where we got to. I just went through in the presentation a few historic images of stuff that showed where we'd been coming from. This is a building we did in '93 using recycled materials, recycled shingle in this case for external cladding. That was a build shot of it. I'll just rush through these. I talked further about them in the award presentation, but jury presentation, but I didn't get through enough slides, so I'll keep going. This is a block of flats in St Kilda that we introduced a wind turbine on the roof and solar panels. This was back in 2005 and 6, and it was pretty adventurous at the time. This is the first building in Castlemaine that we did, which is a little insert into street, but I just wanted to show it for the introduction of land. This frame's totally green now, and you can't see the house behind that. This is a block of terraces that we did in 2010 called Bull Street, which is a prototype for, it was also LBC registered and a prototype for the paddock, where we shared all the information through a website. We won an award for a 10-star house in 2011. So they were all the background things that we're bringing to bear. This is the existing house on the site and a shed to the front of it, which I ended up moving into with my 3 sons in 2012. That was the house on the left. That's the whole site back in 2012. This is us working in the shed at the back where we developed the plans. So we designed the project from the site. One of the main targets of the project was to reintroduce ecological diversity into the site with housing, so they cohabitated. And part of that was doing a community science project to work out what was on the site at the time before the project started. We did this in 3 workshops, 1 winter, 1 summer and 1 spring. And this is, we advertised for the local community to come and learn how to determine what was on the site. Then we mapped what was there and what should have been there, and targeted in the project species that should be there but weren't there. I'll skip over this. Water was a very important part of the project, and this was an early sketch I did of how the dam could work and water could work from runoff into gardens. This is looking at the site and looking at levels and showing where housing could go, so that runoff from housing could go into the garden. The gardening is on the garden zone is on the left, the housing zone's on the right. We did extensive studies and plans into how water flow might work. This is one of the early sort of schemes where we took the Bull Street project and just looked at the density. You can see at this stage the house on the right is still there. We were going to use that as a community centre. Then we did a study on density in town to determine, on that map on the left, you can see the green triangle is where the site is. And we looked at densities around 5 or 6 blocks around town to ascertain what density we were trying to better. Sorry. We also looked at size of housing. Australia has the largest square metre rate of housing per person in the world, and we wanted to ameliorate that. So our projects, our units, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom, you can see the size of them at the bottom is quite a bit smaller than the average. This is an internal shot of one of the units. When fully occupied, it would match a 38 square metre per person density, which, as you look back on this, takes it down to UK, Japan, France. These are some of the early sketches that just trying to work out the systems approach. I think this presentation, I haven't done any work. I didn't have the capacity to do any work in putting this presentation together, really. So this is everything that we've showed purchasers and clients and consultants along the way. So it's part of the process. This is a study of how water flows through the site. This is really early on. And pedestrian, we wanted to be able to access through the site to the bush behind it. Just a lot of sketches that tried to explain simple processes to purchasers and clients. That's, if you look through that creek, the water flow runs down through the middle of the site, and that's been maintained. This is the water flow area. Here's various ways that we looked at the density and trying to work with those heights and water flow. And also being able to bring people into the site was really important, not just occupants, but passers-by and people accessing the land to the top, to the north. A lot of this was, we did probably 8 or 9 workshops with various people like potential purchasers, clients, consultants, and covered different areas. One was the biophilic design workshop. This was with the consultants, but we did another one with purchasers. This is what happens normally in Castlemaine. I took people through a history of biophilia and where it came from and how our assumptions need to change in the relationship between nature and building. Through the biophilic workshops, we did an assessment. People responded, we recorded conversations and looked at what was important to people and set up a chart on the right-hand side of those conversation bits. We identified what people were really talking about so we could bring that into the brief. We did a workshop on LBC expectations with consultants, and this is some of the work with the LBC. Replanting happened to the north of the site. The owners of the site had property to the north there. You can see those green dots where we planted trees. This was a workshop with potential purchasers, people that had put down a deposit to be part of the project, and we worked through what uses could be made out of communal spaces and landscape and things like that. The 35% of the site is dedicated to food production, and you can see now the form of the water course, the dam, the watering, those are wicking beds in the middle there, and then the housing wrapping around that, and cars kept to the edge of the property, and zones going in from the housing through different levels of privacy and communal space. This is what it ended up like. Those units, the blocks we had 6 different blocks. The first 4 were 4 units each. And part of the reason for that is that we could slot in, it was built in stages. First stage was 8 houses in 2 blocks. And we used a 6.5 metre and a 4.5 metre width for the blocks, for the actual units, which allowed us to drop in and out, change the building forms or the building layouts based on the occupants' requirements, so that we could maintain a sort of purchasing process and adapt to the market. So, sorry, back to that. So we had about 20 planning amendments through the process. We had a really good relationship with the council, and we had a master plan, and then we would change it at each stage as we needed to change the unit numbers and sizes. That was just some of the occupants. This is the site. That house down the bottom right is where I lived for 3 years, and the shed to the left of it is where our practice was. So you can see the dam there and the street to the Reckelman Street to the right going into town. Planning permit was issued in 2017. The planning permit and subdivision, you can see the private space is only less than 20% of the whole communal space. We had workshops, as I say there, on discussions about how to structure the owners' corp with the potential purchasers. Client accepted a builder's offer in 2018 for the first stage. They tried to save some money by cutting our contract admin process out, which they realised was a mistake in the first stage, so we got re-engaged for that part. This was the house that was demolished, and we were going to use the bricks. The bricks are used for paving and communal walls. It's just some of the development. This is one of the workshops we did with materials. So I'll just flick through this quickly. There's a lot of slides here. We just talked about this. This was with consultants, with the owners, and with purchasers, so that they understood the process that was taken. So a lot of the work was to communicate what we were doing and feed that back to people so they understood it. And at the time, Declare was very small in Australia, so we didn't have many. We only had 5 products, so we had to do all the research ourselves. As I say, I'll flick through this, I'll run out of time. Just showing the processes. That's the first stage built. This was just looking at the impact of light on the street. This is part of the first stage. This is the second stage starting to be built. We have 4 kilowatts of power on each house, and there is a microgrid and 1 connection to power core. And we produce about 4 times the amount of energy that's being used, which goes back into the owner's corp, and can be shared either amongst other units or just sold back to the grid. There's stage 2 and 3 complete. Stage 4 is on the left. We use a lot of cardboard models just to show form rather than 3D renders. We find it's just more tactile, showing the minimal private space that we had a process of explaining that the analogy to the architecture and the land setup. This was shown to the prospective buyers so they could understand or give some poetics to the building forms. So all the way through, the communication was the key to the longevity of commitment that everyone had to the project. That's it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jeff. And also thank you to our other presenters for your generosity and time. Just a reminder, if you do have questions, you can pop them in the Q&A. What I would like to ask, I think it's so fascinating that these are 3 very different typologies in terms of very different, and I might ask all our presenters to turn their cameras on as well, because I have a question for each of you. Curious to know how much of the sustainability agenda for these projects the clients came to you with, and how much of it do you need to advocate for? Do you know if anybody wants to go first? Jeff? You're on mute, Jeff.
Need to turn that on. We had very enlightened clients that were very committed, but they didn't really know so much what they were committed to above and beyond the power, solar power and water conservation. So we took them on a journey, but they were very committed to the journey.
We were very similar at Woodley. I think the school recognised that while sustainability was at the heart of who they were and what they did, that they perhaps didn't live that fully through their buildings and through their campus. So they actually came to Yoast before they came to us. So yeah, it didn't take a lot of convincing on our side, which was the joy, because it usually does.
I would say our experience was sort of actually split, because we had a very functional building, and the typical way that you would do a building of that sort of light industrial nature is a steel portal frame. And so there were definitely, I guess, challenges in terms of getting timber across the line. So we did do quite a bit of advocacy during the sort of design stages to talk about the benefits, particularly on the workplace, and the kind of mental health and acoustic benefits of timber. And so doing visualizations that showed the difference between steel and timber, and trying to advocate for that investment.
Fabulous. I thought the other thing that's really interesting about each of your presentations is tapping into research as well. You all seem to obviously undertake a lot of research yourself, but also tap into research that others were doing. Susanna, particularly with your orders, talking about is it the woody meadows? Yes.
Woody meadows.
Yeah. How did that come about, that connection?
I'd say in two ways. So our client already does some collaborative research with the University of Melbourne, because they have a death lab. So that we're already familiar with the idea that a university's research could inform the work that they do as an organisation. And then Claire knew that this Woody Meadows trial plot was happening. We needed to do a landscape that would be a very unmanicured, low maintenance, kind of resilient, and it seemed like a really good fit. So just definitely not driven by us so much as our client and our landscape architect. And we just got on board with kind of trying to facilitate those conversations.
Fantastic. John, you also sound like you did a great deal of materials research. Did you do that in-house, or did you partner with someone undertaking that?
In-house. Yoast was really the champion of that. It was a ridiculous level of detail that would go into each thing. Like, one of the ones that stood out to me was we were proposing Trollbeck on the ceilings, early doors, which is like a recycled wood wool product, and we'd all thought it was sustainable, but to make it a Group 2 finish, it's bound with a material or a glue that has VOCs in it. So Yoast and Frank, the project architect, Frank Burridge, in our team, did an enormous amount of research every project that was specified, every product that was specified. So that was really led by those two.
Amazing. And Jeff, you had some amazing research across all sorts of levels of materials, but also in terms of ecology, which you seem to embed into the consultation. Again, how did that come about? Was that initiated by you, or was that through another connection?
It was initiated by various people. I sort of pushed the idea that it could be possible, but didn't really know how to instigate it. So we worked with Dominic Hess from Melbourne University at the time. She's moved on to other jobs, but she linked us in with an ecologist that was just finishing her PhD, and she did a lot of work as well, and we connected with TAFE in Bendigo as well. So it was a part of the thing I skipped over before on my presentation was a thing I set up called the Castlemaine Institute, that I saw there was a lot of knowledge in Castlemaine, but a lot of disconnected knowledge, and wanted to connect people with research and with researchers, and connect researchers with people doing things on the ground. So it followed a bit out of that thinking. Everything that we've done over the last 10 years here has been based on work in Castlemaine. So I sort of said, you know, what I'm interested in is being very, very local, but teasing out the most that we can, you know, the best of what we can do in a local situation.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We're almost out of time, but I'd just like to thank again the three of you. They're three extraordinary and very impressive projects. We really appreciate you sharing them with all of us today. And I'd also like to thank everybody for joining. And just a reminder that lean-ins are recorded to view later, and you get notifications of when new lean-ins are on offer by subscribing to the Australian Institute for Architects YouTube channel, YouTube @Oz Architects. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you.